Hi, this is Tim Allen for QSPNLive.com, and I'm here today with Granite County Sheriff Scott Dunkerson. Scott, thanks for being with us today.
No problem.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff going on in the county, and one of the things you guys just had was this dam exercise. Mm-hmm. And so kind of explain a little bit to us about that, what that was and why it needed to happen.
Well, Rick Day, he's the Disaster and Emergency Services Coordinator for the county, and first off, it's a requirement that the county have a exercise about every 5 years for the dam that they're responsible for. So what it involves is a drill, an exercise in the event that something does happen with the dam at Georgetown Lake or the other, East Fork or Willow Creek Reservoir within the county, and what the county's response would be to that in the preservation of life, property, and infrastructure if we were to have a catastrophic failure at Georgetown Lake Reservoir.
So, a lot of counties don't necessarily have a dam. So what are some of the unique challenges that particular thing brings to you and to the county as a whole?
Well, some of the challenges it's a pretty good draw on resources to have to prepare for an exercise like this. It involves a lot of time and effort, mainly a lot of time on Rick Day's part. He did a very good job organizing this functional exercise that we did. So it's an expense for the county to have to prepare and hopefully never use the response that we prepared for on Saturday.
And so that exercise, what are some of the things that entailed? What are some of the components you guys went through?
Initially, in our scenario this last weekend, it involved a call into dispatch where the scenario was there was an earthquake and there was reported sinkhole and seepage from Georgetown Lake Dam. And what that does is activate our emergency reaction plan located in dispatch. It's basically a theory and binder with all the information we need in that binder, we being dispatch and all the other players involved need to respond to that type of scenario.
And so you guys, what are some of the positives and the negatives that came away from that? What are some of the things you guys learned from that?
Generally speaking, some of the positives that come from it is I feel that Granite County is, as far as the emergency message that was delivered to the public, some of the others, I feel that some of the positives come out of it, that we are pretty well prepared to respond to that type of event. There's some things that we learned that we could do better I'm currently addressing with Rick Day, the DES coordinator.
And one of the things that you talked about is you guys have this iPod system.
We do. It's called the Integrated Public Alert Warning System. And it's basically, a good way to explain it is it's like an Amber Alert issue. That if there were to be a potential problem with any of the dams or any major emergency within our county, Granite County would send out that alert to the public.
And so that alert would show up on their phones, tablets, anything that's wireless, or how does that get transmitted?
Yes, it does get transmitted that way. The media, a lot of people would be notified very rapidly of the situation, yes.
And so that's something that people haven't seen on their phone necessarily, but that they could.
Potentially, yes. If we were to have, and that's actually the first actual test that we got to do of iPods was last Saturday. There's things that went well on that test initially, but there was a second stage to that test that didn't go so well that we're going to try to fix.
How many counties have that particular program? Are there a lot of them, a few of them?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how many people are using. I know like Missoula County is, some of the surrounding counties are using that for mass notification.
So this is, a cutting edge thing that Granite County, out here in kind of the middle of nowhere sometimes, we're right on the edge of that. So that if you have a cell phone, it's always great to carry that to get any information like that or anything else.
If you're getting Amber Alerts, you would get an iPause alert on your phone. If you're getting Amber Alerts, you would get that alert, yes.
And so you talked a little bit about Rick and his preparation and the job he's doing. Can you kind of tell us? You seem to think he's really handling this well.
He is, because Rick's got a lot of good experience. His background involved, he served a stint as the director for the Department of Corrections, etc. Rick's been around. he knows emergencies and knows how to deal with them, and he just seems very well at coordinating emergency services for these types of events. Hopefully we never have to use this, the training and preparation that we did last Saturday, but it's always good to know what your response would be like if we needed it.
Yeah, what your capabilities are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, so you can avoid those.
I know there, I don't want to talk too much about the past, but there was an event in Granite County in the 90s where East Fork Reservoir did have a problem. There was a huge sinkhole in the reservoir, and so these things can happen.
Yeah.
So.
And if a flood like that happened from Georgetown Lake, what kind of effect are we talking about? I mean, would this thing just wash down the valley, or how would that?
Well, it would, and some of the effects we talked about was loss to Highway 1 would be washed out. Of course, those things can be fixed relatively quickly, but loss of power, Phillipsburg would kind of be cut off from the outside world, maybe for just a short time until, but a wave of water would come down through the lower lying parts of the valley for sure, yes.
So, I mean, you're looking at that whole valley there. Maxville would probably have some significant issues.
Well, that's something that we covered pretty well in the exercises. I thought it would take longer, but I don't have the exact amount of time, but it was roughly a couple hours for that water flow to reach the bottom valley by Phillipsburg. So, like, for example, I thought it would be shorter time.
Yeah.
The flow, that's what the flow charts and all the experts are telling us. And like the bridge out there on Highway 348 or Marshall Creek Road, it would more than likely be washed out.
Wow.
There would be a pretty good large water flow through there, and then where the canyon comes together by Black Pine, it's going to get really elevated through that whole Maxville Canyon again.
Wow.
And then after it gets out of Maxville, it's going to flow out again.
Yeah.
Now the charts, if they're accurate, they show that basically the entire railroad bed along the Drummond area there, the water would make it up into the town of Drummond. That's what the charts are showing.
That it would or would
it would not?
It would not.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, because that just seems like a.
And I think it was 12 hours projected from if it were to be an entire failure of the dam, it takes like 12 hours for it to reach Drummond.
That just seems.
So something we learned is we started evacuating in our scenario from Georgetown Lake, which makes sense, the campground towards Phillipsburg.
Sure.
We're going to send all of our resources doing evacuations, my deputies, probably some fire department personnel, anybody that I can get to assist me that has experience, which we got a lot this last summer doing evacuations. We're going to start working from Georgetown towards Phillipsburg, and that's something I thought that we did exceptionally well in the drill is addressing those evacuation concerns and needs and getting it done.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
So
So another area we talked a little bit about is this time of year, with the holidays and that, there's a little bit of stress that kind of comes into families. And you talked a little bit about the domestic issues that arise in families. Can you maybe kind of address some of the things you see there that might be a concern?
Well, we haven't seen a huge elevated in response to disturbances, but throughout my career, through the holiday season, it seems to be that families can be stressed by the I don't know if it's financial burdens that come with the holidays that people seem to think that they have to have. But yeah, we see an increase a little bit in domestic situations. Unfortunately, sometimes violence in those situations, yes.
And so, in some of those end up being either alcohol, drug related, maybe that they already have an addiction to those kind of things. Mm-hmm. What are some of the resources that the county has to help folks with that?
Well, there's a Tri-County Addiction Services. One of the representatives from that office is on the DUI task board with us. Her name's Michelle Harrington. There is some resources to help folks with addictions. Unfortunately, if they're arrested, then they're thrown into the legal system where the courts order them to get that, if there's alcohol involved, that type of treatment, etc. But there is limited resources available, but there is some. And
we do have the task force that's here in the county, right?
Which one?
Was it drug and alcohol?
DUI task
DUI
force?
task force.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, The DUI task force basically focuses on, what the DUI task force focuses on is education and prevention of impaired driving, drugs and alcohol, to prevent fatalities on the highways. That's primarily their focus.
And do they do that primarily through schools, or are there other outlets for that, or?
We have done some in the schools. We bought a simulator into the schools last year. The DUI task force did for prevention and education of kids, and that involved texting, by the way, texting scenarios while driving and stuff like that. But yeah, the schools is one. You know, for example, yesterday in our DUI task force meeting, we decided to do an ad in the paper. It's, you know, don't drink and drive. We encourage you to get a designated driver. There's a reward system for that. The deputies have been given gift cards by the DUI task force to issue out to people if we stop them and they're a designated driver. They get a gift card to one of the local businesses here in town.
Wow!
To try to give people incentive to do the right thing and not.
I gotta look into that. I don't drink, so I'm a perfect target for that. I will be in your business soon.
That's something that we've been doing actually now for a couple of years, giving out incentive cards. And what the task force does is, one of the board members, Blaine, the vice president, he'll go. We used to buy chamber bucks, but now we do. We try to rotate to all the businesses in town to get gift cards, and we voted to buy some more yesterday because we're out. So if the deputy, and it does happen quite often, when you're patrolling, you'll stop somebody that's giving somebody intoxicated a ride home. They get a card if they want it. We'll get one.
Well, that's a great idea. And if you're a local business, I think that's something that would be well worth your time to donate to. I mean, that's a great cause to keep people as safe as
hopefully as safe
possible.
as we can. Yeah.
So another thing about keeping people safe is a year ago you guys put the resource officer into the school system, and I know there was a little concern from some folks when that thing first got proposed. Something that's a little new to hear, but how has that worked out? How has that gone?
It's gone really well. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. That I've got is a lot of positive feedback. The Deputy Russell's done an exceptional job in the school. Meeting the goals that we set for the first year was primarily to establish a rapport with the kids and provide for their safety, not just while in school, but outside of school. You know, give the kids a place to, or somebody to talk to that they can trust, you know, if they're having a problem.
Yeah. And so have you seen, obviously you can't go into specifics, but have you seen some things avoided or averted through that program that, have been a benefit to those kids?
In my eyes, we have. Deputy Russell's worked a handful of different things that, in my humble opinion, have definitely, without a doubt, made a difference.
Well, I know that in my experience, having lived other places down in Southern California, that was kind of a common thing. Mm-hmm. And I think the investment the county commissioners made on that and with your department has been a great investment.
I think I don't get a lot of the naysayers come to me with feedback from the school resource position, but I think if anybody had any reservations about having a deputy in the school, I would encourage them to ask their kids how they feel about it. Yeah. And I would suspect that they're going to get a positive response from their children about Deputy Russell being in the schools. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I know they will.
So one last area that we wanted to talk about was the prisoners probation program in the state and how that has changed.
Can we back up just a hair to this? Oh, sure. One other thing with Jim and the school resource officer thing is he doesn't spend full time in the school as far as he doesn't come on and work 40 hours a week in the Phillipsburg school. There's 3 schools in Granite County, and he'll spend a little bit of time in Phillipsburg. There's no set schedule. Matter of fact, that's what he's doing today. But Jim is still a deputy sheriff first. So if we have cases that we're working, Jim's a deputy coroner. He works on those cases, and if he doesn't have too much going on at the school, so that's not a full-time thing, but it's something that I believe is not a positive.
Yeah, I think
for the
anytime
entire community.
I think when you further that relationship with kids and law enforcement, or I've seen the kids that come through Drummond, and I'm sure they do with the fire department here, when they get more familiar with those first responder type people, they feel more comfortable.
And I mean, we're a small community, obviously. I mean, Drummond Hall, Phillipsburg schools didn't have a high problem with kids being in trouble. I know that.
Yeah.
You know, that's a given. So obviously to put a deputy in the school to do just investigation of crimes and this and that wasn't our goal at all.
Right.
It just wasn't.
But it does give them a resource if they think there's maybe a problem at home or a problem with a friend or somebody that they don't think they can talk to a teacher. Maybe the resource.
The reality of this is there is children in our community that could use a hand. This is the reality of it. I mean, it's a handful, but the handful is worth getting by the grab.
Yep, getting it early.
Yeah. So most of our kids in this community still have a lot of good parents that we never deal with. They got good parents. So and even the ones that are having problems and this and that, they're good kids. They just need somebody to help them. That's why we're in law enforcement, is to help people. So we had our patch redesigned, and one of the slogans I put on our patch is "We're servants of the people," and I strongly believe that. So
that's really cool. And of course, you got an elk on there too.
Yeah, I strongly believe in elk too. That's just that's Granite County in Montana is our wildlife. That's why that's on there. So
let's talk about this prisoner probation and parole change that's kind of happened in the state and how that may or may not affect Granite County a little bit.
Okay.
You've indicated that they're starting to release some people on parole and probation that could still be hazardous and may or may not, be the kind of people you want released. So how does that? How do you see that playing out?
In our last Montana Sheriffs and Peace Officers Conference, what that is basically a lot of the sheriffs in the state of Montana get together and discuss the issues facing our counties. And during that meeting, our last conference, I think it was the Deputy Director of the Department of Corrections come in and they gave a talk about how Montana Department of Corrections wants to model their how they're doing things with probation and parolees like California's doing it. So what they want to do, the way I understood this anyways, what they want to do is they want to save money by releasing the people that they think they can release out of prison and put them on supervision on the streets. To my estimation, a lot of the concerns, rightfully so, in that room that day were, what about these people living in our communities and us having to have more people victimized potentially, and the cost of the counties to re-prosecute and incarcerate these people. So I think the state has shifted the financial responsibility back onto the counties by this mass influx of probation and parolees back out in the communities. And if that's not enough said, I would encourage anybody watching this just to, when you see something bad happen statewide in Montana, wherever it may be, Billings, etc., to research that a little bit and find out, was that person on probation or parole? Because the ones I've been seeing where something bad has happened in our state, most of those folks were on supervision.
And so you're not necessarily against the probation and parole.
Absolutely not.
It's the level of what they're being paroled from, maybe, as far as whether or not it was a violent act versus some kind of petty theft thing or something of that nature.
That's right.
And so that puts potentially puts a burden on sheriffs like you and other counties to have to deal with these guys again, or in some capacity that maybe you wouldn't normally have to.
Granite County is not a real populated county, we all know that, but there has been circumstances where we've dealt with folks on probation and parole that the local taxpayer has had to pay to re-incarcerate on new charges, yes. And the state skates free from it.
Yeah, and so do you think this stems a little bit from this budget shortfall that they're potentially going through, that they're looking at, let's get them to pay for it?
I'm not an accountant or anything from the state, but I would suspect that, yes, Tim. I don't know the exact answer, but there's got to be a driving reason behind it. There are some folks that are let out that are worth, taking a shot at and reintegrating into the community, and hopefully they do well. We don't want to deal with them again, but if they're going to bring violence and drugs and those sorts of problems back into our communities, we will pursue them, arrest them, and prosecute them again.
One final thing, I know you had mentioned this when we talked before, but and kind of going back to the dam exercise with the LAPC meetings, but those are open to the public. So if people want to come, they have those quarterly. I know you guys just had one not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
And so there's another one coming up like
I don't have
February or
exact date.
something probably.
Yeah.
But look, if we get those dates, we'll have them on our calendar.
Maybe I could have Rick David, the ES coordinator, forward you those meeting information.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have, I don't know if you guys post those on your site, but if you have the minutes or the agenda, please, we'll be more than happy to do that.
I don't know if we elaborated what LEPC is, a local emergency planning committee. That's what that is, and that's where we plan to prepare for these sorts of drills, any drills. We did a hazmat exercise in Drummond, a functional tabletop on a hazmat spill in Drummond. We were hoping to do a train potentially, but it ended up being a truck that tipped over with some bad chemicals in it. So yeah, that's where all of that planning takes place, and we encourage. I mean, there was a couple of folks from the public at the actual exercises Saturday in Phillipsburg,
and I know
that's a good thing.
And I know for us, we picked up that Wiser app. I don't know exactly what it stands for, but I know that it has all the hazmat information on it. And
very handy tool.
And not to pat my own back, but there was no training for the mobile version of it. There was only desktop training. So I developed that so the guys in Valley Fire would have a clue as how to do that, on their phone and be able to. And in fact, it was funny. We had a truck that crashed on the highway up there on I-90, and it was, when we got the call, it says it was leaking chemical, but it was only leaking fuel. And so Sean and I both were like, boy, we got this app, we better use it right now. But some great things come out of that. And if you're looking for information on what's going on, that's also a great time to see the guys from Valley Fire, from the Phillipsburg Fire, from your department. Everybody at that LEPC meeting is kind of there to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Well, I know they are. All the meetings that we have, even in Drummond Ambulance, I've been a member of Drummond Ambulance for a lot of years now. Those meetings are open to the public. Our meetings are open to the public at any time. They're posted. They're in the newspaper. They're posted. I'm trying to think where else Drummond Ambulance posts those. I'd be up to Sheila Manley, but
I think they put them at like the post offices and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking to do that, I know right now the Drummond Ambulance was looking for recruits. I know they just had
we're actively looking at a lot. We just had a meeting on a upcoming class, and unfortunately 3 people showed up, and 2 of those were my deputies. But I've been an EMT a long time, and it's a good service. It's a service that we definitely need, and it's always been a struggle. I've been with the services for about 19 years now, and it's always been a struggle to have EMTs on those services.
And I wasn't intending to go down this road, but I think people don't understand. It's not like, I don't know, as a kid, I
wasn't intending, sorry to interrupt him, to go down this road either, but it's something that affects the sheriff's office on a very much so on a weekly basis. We'll go to, I don't know, a handful of calls throughout the week, and I was on one yesterday, and I'll probably be on several before the end of the week, because I go countywide, and most of the time, we get. I'm not saying that the ambulance crews don't respond, and I'm certainly not bashing our crews. I'm part of them. It's a heck of a commitment to become an EMT. There's a lot of training involved, and there's a lot of continuing education involved to do that, and that's asking a lot for somebody to volunteer.
And it is.
It's not like the fire department.
But
I've been on the fire department as well.
Right. But I do think people have a conception that they're going to be performing some kind of triage or something out. This is get people stable so they can be transported. It's not like you're going to be cutting into people. Don't be intimidated by that. If you want to serve, there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
So
we would definitely like to see a little more interest in the EMT world. And some folks have mentioned that possibly that's a conflict for the sheriff's office to be doing that, and I strongly disagree with that, and here's the reason why. Because when I went through the police academy, you had to become a first responder to be a police officer. Yeah. I think it goes hand in hand. Matter of fact, I know it does, because the Peace Officer Standards Training Council still recognizes an EMT class as peace officer training. And I got a couple of deputies that are interested in going through it. So we're very oftentimes, the first people to arrive on scene, and we take that real seriously and try to do the best we can until we can get our crews there. So
All right. Well, Scott, we appreciate your time today,
Yeah,
and I hope you guys stay safe out there, and hope everything goes well. So thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it, man. All right. So if you have any questions, we'll try and get some numbers for some of the various resources that we mentioned today, and have those during the broadcast and afterwards. Again, Scott Dunkerson, our Granite County Sheriff, for QSPNLive.com. I'm Tim Allen.